So maybe you've opened up your Christmas presents and you've got a new camera recently, or maybe you've had a camera that you're just not too sure how to use entirely. Maybe you roll on automatic, which, to you it seems great and it works. But what if I told you, if you were to take the time to learn the manual settings, over time you will get experienced enough and you will end up being quicker than being able to do an automatic shot. What I'm talking about is called controlling the exposure triangle. And that consists of controlling your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. And let me show you what some of these look like in practice. So let's start with aperture. So the aperture, if you've ever looked inside of the lens, there's what is called an iris that closes and opens to let more light and less light into the shot. When your iris is cranked open, you have a wider aperture. And what that allows you to do is it allows more light to enter into the lens. This sounds like you would have a higher f-stop number, but essentially it's actually the opposite. The wider your aperture is, the lower your f-stop number is. Because allowing more light in, actually what it ultimately does for your shot is gives you a depth of field look. So the wider your aperture, the lower the number of the f-stop, means your subject is going to be more isolated from the rest of the shot. Your subject will appear very, very sharp. Everything in the background will tend to be very blurry. You can also crank your f-stop higher and get the opposite effect, where now your shot is actually more clear overall. The shutter speed is number 2. If your shutter speed is quicker, this allows less light in. If the shutter speed on the opposite is remain open for longer, more light will be able to come in. But what's better? So if you have your shutter speed quicker, your shot will be more sharp. But what it also does on the end is eliminates from motion blur, as what happens when the actual shutter opens, the sensor is being subjected to light. So the less times that is happening for a less amount of time, the more exact each individual frame is going to be, therefore eliminating motion blur, camera shake, and other unwanted elements. Now, if you wanted to have a longer exposure with the shutter speed, that could be useful in possibly like a dream sequence or something else. It is up to your vision to decide. So I wanted to touch on this one last just because I think of it as a last-ditch effort in most filming situations. Your ISO. And what it does is when you have a higher ISO, it gives you more light, but it's done digitally. When you digitally increase your ISO, you generate more noise on your image, depending on your lens and your camera setup. So in my opinion, it's a last-ditch effort. Adjust your shutter speed and your aperture first, then go to your ISO. And if you still can't get it to look right, if it's still looking too noisy, bring in external lights. Maybe it's the scene. Think about that. So that's the exposure triangle. It's a beautiful thing once you understand it completely, because you will find, like I was saying before, automatic versus manual. That manual tends to be more precise. Your image doesn't change, and you have more control in the end. With automatic, you get what you get. Hopefully you can see the power in both of those. And don't be daunted. Manual does take a little bit to learn and to get control and comfortable with it, but in time, it'll be well worth it.